Rich, you are developing CoreDAO, core contributor. Because DAO is in the name, maybe we could start with some kind of like the organizational setup. Like, you guys are in L1 and you're developing the ecosystem, so eventually going to pull contributors and contributions from several places around. But maybe we can start with why you chose to be a decentralized from the beginning, and then what the ecosystem strategy is to acquire contributors, acquire projects, and ultimately integrate with several applications.
So there's a lot to unpack there. So the CoreDAO currently is about 45 members all around the globe, and a lot of those people have come out of our Discord community or through Twitter. So a bunch of it's already, very community driven since the very beginning, and that's also the approach to the ecosystem. It's finding the best builders from around the globe, the best infrastructure providers, etc. And long term, that's one approach to building like a really healthy and long term. Yeah, so, down there. Okay. And that's one of the ways to, build a really healthy long-term ecosystem is lots of community involvement. Some of the things that's different about Core is it was actually totally self-funded. There's a large initial airdrop, so the users of the network were the initial holders. So it's been a very different approach since day one.
Awesome. So let's talk about a little bit about the more of the technical side. Like what is going to differentiate you guys from some of the other networks out there? Like what is unique about CoreDAO relative to some other networks?
Yeah, so Core has a very unique consensus mechanism called Satoshi Plus, and it's actually a blend of delegated proof of stake and proof of work. And the proof of work component comes directly from Bitcoin in this trustless relaying process. And currently 1 out of every 2 Bitcoin blocks is already being delegated to Core. So that strength of the Bitcoin consensus is directly benefiting Core users today. And the miners also benefit from Core rewards, which allows them to continue to invest in additional OpEx when it comes to securing Bitcoin. A stronger Bitcoin leads to a stronger Core. And when it comes to why Core is different, well, there's the strong belief that most people in crypto start with Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin, like a strong, healthy Bitcoin is good for the space. And in general, there's so much utility that needs to come to Bitcoin, and Core, because it's EVM compatible, can support a lot of those new and novel use cases that folks are trying to build into Bitcoin, but maybe don't want to integrate into the chain itself.
Awesome. So that answers one of my next questions I was going to ask anyway, which was like why you chose not to develop with some of these more modular approaches. Like we've seen OP Stack, we've seen Arbitrum Orbit, all of these like infrastructure stacks. It sounds like you guys have chosen to go with a unique form of infrastructure for the greater security by leveraging both the Bitcoin network as well as the EVM to combine both those mechanisms. And that's why you chose not to go with some of the pre-existing stacks and infrastructure, kind of like roll up in a box type of solutions.
Yeah, that's a very astute observation. And yeah, I think when... No, but I just keep laughing because I keep bringing it up and you're like, no, bring it down.
Even yeah.
And these new lights are so much better. This is way more comfortable too. So today, why Core chose to be an L1 that was totally standalone is when the project was coming to life, there was this understanding that most of the major ecosystems that had come to play, let's call it the 2017 cycle, had sacrificed decentralization. And without decentralization, you really have to ask yourself, what good can crypto do without being the ability to stand on its own, fight dynamic currencies, unstable governments, like all of those sorts of problems. So decentralization really is paramount. And there wasn't a way to do that without tying into the most decentralized network, which is Bitcoin. And the governance of Bitcoin, there's lots of different opinions on that, but it is the healthiest form of governance. And that was something that was very important to launching a new chain, was making sure that the chain itself stayed true to that ethos.
Yeah, I'm glad you talked about governance because that's where I'd like to go next. Like, I think it's important from both the B2B infrastructure side so that you can develop kind of like a thriving ecosystem of applications. Ultimately, those applications are participants in governance as well. And then you also have the users and the token holders that participate in governance from a more individual maybe they're delegates, but maybe they're also just pure individuals with a hefty token stack, and they participate that way. So what is the governance picture? Like, are you guys incentivizing governance at all? What are kind of like some of the learnings that you've taken into account over, we've had DAOs live for maybe 3 years now. Even if you want to go back to 2017 with MakerDAO, maybe we've had several years of DAO governance now. What are some of the learnings that you've taken into account from those DAOs?
So I'd say there's an interesting history when it comes to DAO governance over the years, and we've seen a lot of what doesn't work, but I think the jury's out on what does work, and it's very interesting. Like you mentioned, Maker doing really cool stuff with the end game, OP Stack's doing some cool stuff, Lido's even doing some cool stuff, and that's a little more theoretical. And I'd say that right now we're in a token voting system, which is pretty common. However, the network itself is looking for ways to bolster that governance, and we've got some pretty interesting blog posts that'll come out soon, but we're believers that maybe a multi-party system is where this should head. There's a lot of like real-world use case that we've seen, and what does work in governance out there needs to be brought back into crypto. And this is actually an interesting use of this piece is to actually help invite other governance researchers that might want to get involved with helping Core figure out, what a multi-party system might look like.
Yeah, one of the most significant governance contributors that I've seen just in the ecosystem has been universities. It's been really cool to see like Penn, USC, Northeastern, those universities contribute to some of the top blockchain projects and manage those treasuries when they still are like on the younger side. And I think that's a different, it's a difference between kind of like at least the government in the US right now that is exceedingly elder, if you will, to kind of the governance that we have in crypto, which is particularly unique for like this industry. I also helped start the university group at blockchain group at my university, so those kind of protocol politicians hold a special place in my heart, and I hope to see them also contribute to the governance over on Core. So for those kinds of contributors, whether they're at a university or they're contributing to some other protocols or DAOs in the space, what's the best way for them to kind of like break through, get involved, start learning, and then ultimately kind of start making contributions to the CoreDAO?
So anyone that wants to get involved in CoreDAO usually will come in through Discord or Twitter or Telegram, one of like the main channels, to start adding value by asking questions or submitting proposals or interesting topics that should be investigated. And it's really kind of this trust building process that happens not just at Core, but in most of these ecosystems, where people are essentially doing some amount of proof of work, if you will, by participating in some aspect of the community. And then from there, those people will tend to get more and more involved and get more community support and may even, get a full-time role with the DAO itself. That the bottoms-up process is something that is very unique to crypto, but also very healthy because the people that get involved are very invested in making whatever, public good they're working on a better place. And I think when you talk about universities and that sort of thing, diversity of thought is really important and diversity of opinion. And it's great to see such conflicting opinions in crypto, which is so different than kind of what you see in some of the real world. But, as an organization, we invite people from all over to get involved.
Awesome. Yeah, the kind of switching gears a little bit, but one of the kind of, as we close out, wrap up here, like, I am curious how, like, what the, almost like the business development, the more like the ecosystem growth strategy, I think, to put it that way, like, what is the strategy to tap into the users and the liquidity on existing chains? That's kind of like part one of my question. And then part two would be like, what is CoreDAO going to do to try to onboard some of the normies, some of the no coiners that aren't currently on any of these other existing chains, but are maybe crypto curious, or also just, there's part one, there's going after the users and the liquidity existing, and then kind of breaking into new frontiers.
So I'll start with the question around the new frontiers, and this is actually something that Core has prized from the very beginning. And like, Core is crypto maxis, if you will, not Bitcoin or Ethereum and Core maxis. It's the good that crypto can do in the world that it's uniquely suited for. And when Core tried to build its initial audience and its community, it actually partnered with an app called the Satoshi app that helped build this community through various game mechanics and eventually the airdrop. And those were net new folks to crypto that were the initial holders of the network. And what that really solved was cashless onboarding, which is one of the biggest challenges for the billions of people out there that, can't just go buy crypto today on an easy exchange, et cetera. And that's something that we're going to really double and triple down on over the, next year if there's additional partnerships, is how do we find these onboarding mechanisms to get to, let's call it tens or hundreds of millions of folks. And those aren't just the existing people in the ecosystems today. It's the people that might have heard about crypto but don't have a way to easily participate. And that's really important because we have to get to real scale in Web 2 terms versus just Web 3 terms to be a successful industry. And that's a big focus for us, is really this cashless onboarding. On the other side, it's like, how do you attract maybe the more crypto native, the degens, all those sorts of groups, which are very, very different archetypes. And a lot of that, as of now, is trying to find homegrown projects that want to make core their home, that want to deliver a lot of value to our ecosystem, our community. And that even comes through with some of the stuff we do with grants, which is instead of just paying huge amounts to get people to launch on core, it's finding out how do you incentivize people to add value. And that value could be actual transactions, could be TVL, other things to help the community grow and thrive. And that's really the guiding light of our grants program, as well as a lot of the outreach that is done. And there's also, again, going after your blue chips, et cetera, and kind of a more classic business development process. But I'd say it's a really holistic strategy because we want core to be the home for all users, not just, the existing Web 3 audience.
Awesome. I think we got what we needed. I think that was good. Cool, man.